In this PowerPoint, we will cover what is an engineering notebook, why do you keep an engineering notebook, who keeps an engineering notebook, what goes into an engineering notebook, including the sections, the standard page layout, some best practices, and historical examples. It's important to note that there are many formats used to document within an engineering notebook. The format introduced in IED accumulates the best practices and presents a standard for the purpose of consistency. When and if you choose to become an engineer, you will evolve your practices and procedures for your engineering notebook to match your preferences and company policies, which vary widely. So, what is an engineering notebook? An engineering notebook is a book in which an engineer will formally document in chronological order all of his or her work that is associated with a specific design project. A chronological record means starting with the earliest and following the order in which they occurred. An engineering notebook needs to have a clear and detailed description of your design process. A good way to check that you are being thorough in your documentation of the design process is by asking yourself the question, could someone unfamiliar to my work take over the project without additional information? The purpose of keeping an engineering notebook is to prove the origin of your ideas, prove when events or ideas occurred, prove diligence in turning the idea into a solution, and to prove when your idea became a working solution. An engineering notebook is recognized in the U.S. court system as a legal document. That means by documenting your process, specifically when it comes to designing a new product or invention, your engineering notebook becomes your proof that your idea is in fact yours and that you own any profit that is to be made by that idea. Without proper documentation of your process, you could be the designer of the next hit product in stores around the world, but could lose out on all the money to be made from that product. That is why it's so important to protect your ideas with the proof provided in an engineering notebook. In addition to individual inventors that may eventually want to claim intellectual property rights for a new idea or product, research and development firms, as well as companies that perform their own research and development, require their engineers to keep engineering notebooks. Engineering notebooks provide evidence when seeking a patent and facilitate the continuity of a project when personnel changes occur. In addition, many college engineering programs require students to keep an engineering journal as process documentation of a project. Fully documenting the design process provides students with an opportunity to gain experience and skills that are important in the engineering profession. An engineering notebook should provide a record of all details related to the design project. This list is not all inclusive. Everything you do or think about with respect to the design project should be included in the engineering notebook. Pictures are an excellent way to document parts of your process and can provide evidence that words alone cannot convey. Take pictures throughout the process and insert them into your engineering notebook. The items on this page are highly recommended, but there is no one correct way to keep an engineering notebook. Remember that the goal is to document your design process so that you can prove that the work is original when it was completed and that it belongs to you. The more details you include and the better organized your notebook, the better. In our IED class, we will use our class website, Edmodo, to document our design process. This is different than that of the traditional pen and paper model of keeping the design process, but will allow us to document in chronological order all the steps you take in class to solve a problem for each of your designs. In a traditional engineering notebook, a standard page layout may look like this. Again, these are suggestions for your engineering notebook and highly recommended. In IED, you will be assessed on your diligence in following good practices of thorough documentation on our classroom website. However, remember that there is no one correct way to keep an engineering notebook. Again, in a traditional engineering notebook, some practices include numbering the pages sequentially, using pens that do not bleed, and not removing or adding pages. Another best practice is to draw a line to mark out blank spaces. This prevents you or someone else to add documentation out of order in your notebook. In an engineering notebook, you may see that mistakes are not erased or removed, but simply marked out. This allows for complete transparency of your thoughts and ideas. Dating entries is really important. Your goal is to provide as much detail and organization as possible so that there's no question about your design process and when it was completed. It's important to keep detailed sketches in your engineering notebook. All sketches should be labeled. For example, you want to include information about what the sketch is, what's its function, material, etc. Include important dimensions and measurements. Calculations and figures need to be labeled clearly. Be sure to define all variables and provide enough information that another person can follow your calculations and work. There should also be progress entries where you reflect on tasks that you have accomplished, write about your success and failures, and even consider future needs and tasks. The big idea of engineering notebooks is that they need to be neat, accurate, legible, and thorough. Here is an example of Mr. Earl Silas Tupper's engineering notebook in which he diagrams one of his many Tupperware inventions. Another historical example from Everett Huckle Bickley of electromechanical flycatcher from 1943. And finally, an engineering notebook example from Howard Head, the inventor of the oversized tennis racket.